Okay, so you want to buy a football club. You've seen the trophies, the press conferences, the jersey with your name on the back. Here's the problem. Almost every football club in the world loses money every single year, and yet the richest people on the planet are lining up to buy them. That's not a contradiction. That's the whole business model. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how much a football club costs, why the numbers on the balance sheet almost never tell the real story, and what billionaires are actually buying when they write that check. Let's start with the price tag. In English football, there are 20 clubs in the Premier League. 20 clubs, and combined, they are worth more than every other football league on earth put together. The cheapest club in the Premier League right now is worth around $200 million. The most expensive, Manchester United, was recently valued at over $6 billion. That's not a football club. That's a small country's GDP. But $6 billion is for the very top. Let's go one level down. A mid-table Premier League club. Think Everton, Wolves, Fulham, runs between $400 and $800 million. For that money, you get a stadium, a training ground, an academy, and a squad of players. You also get the contracts, the debts, the lawsuits, and the fans who already hate whoever owns the club. In Europe, the prices are different, but the logic is the same. Real Madrid is valued at around $6.6 billion. Technically the most valuable club on earth right now. But Real Madrid is not for sale. It never has been. Real Madrid is owned by its members, 91,000 socios, who each pay an annual fee to belong to the club. No single person can buy it. No sheikh, no tech billionaire, no private equity fund. The same structure applies to Barcelona and Athletic Bilbao. These clubs are, legally, member-owned cooperatives, not assets, not investments, institutions. So if you want to actually buy something, you're looking at England, France, Italy, or Germany. In France, PSG sold for 400 million euros in 2011, when Qatar Sports Investments bought it. Today, it's worth over $4 billion. Qatar turned 400 million euros into $4 billion in 13 years. On paper, that sounds like a brilliant investment. We'll come back to why it isn't. Not really. You've bought your club. Now let's talk about where the money actually goes. A Premier League club has three main sources of income. The first is broadcast rights. Premier League sells its TV deal globally and splits the money between all 20 clubs. In the current cycle, each Premier League club gets a minimum of around $110 million per year just from television. Even if you finish last and get relegated, you still get that money for the season you were there. That number goes up if you finish higher. Top 4 clubs can earn $180 million from TV alone. The second source is matchday revenue. Tickets, hospitality, food, merchandise sold at the ground. A club like Arsenal, with 60,000 seats and a waiting list of 150,000 for season tickets, earns around $130 million a year just on match days. The third source is commercial revenue. Shirt sponsors, kit deals, naming rights, global partnerships. Manchester United earns over $350 million a year from commercial deals alone. 1. Their shirt sponsor, Team Viewer, then now Snapdragon, pays around $60 million a year just for the front of the jersey. Add it all up, a top Premier League club brings in $600 to $900 million a year. That sounds like a very healthy business. Now look at what goes out. Player wages are the single biggest cost in football, anywhere from 60% to 80% of total revenue. At Manchester City, the annual wage bill is over $450 million. That's before a single transfer fee is paid. Transfer fees are the second big cost. And unlike wages, they don't repeat every year. They arrive in giant, unpredictable spikes. Chelsea spent over $1 billion on transfers in 2022 and 2023 combined. They are still losing over $100 million a year. Then there's the stadium. Most clubs don't own their ground outright. They're paying off construction loans, maintenance costs, safety upgrades mandated by the league. Tottenham's new stadium cost £1.2 billion to build. They're still paying it off. Add the academy, the coaching staff, the medical team, the analytics department, the legal team. A Premier League club employs between 500 and 1,000 people before you count a single player. Run the numbers. Most Premier League clubs operate at a loss every year. Everton has lost over $600 million in the last 5 years. Manchester United, the most commercially successful club on earth, reported a net loss of $45 million in 2023. So why does anyone buy these things? Here's what most people miss about football club economics. The losses on the income statement are real, but they're not the whole story. What you're really buying is an asset that appreciates regardless of how the team performs. In 2003, Roman Abramovich bought Chelsea for £140 million. When he was forced to sell in 2022, after the UK government froze his assets following the invasion of Ukraine, Chelsea sold for £2.5 billion. He lost money running the club every single year for 19 years, and still turned £140 million into £2.5 billion. That's an 18 times return on the original investment. Compare that to the S&P 500 over the same period, roughly 4 times. A football club, run at an annual loss, outperformed the stock market by 4 times. Why does the value keep going up if the business keeps losing money? 2 reasons. First, scarcity. There are only 20 spots in the Premier League. The number never changes. The right to compete at the top level of English football is a finite, non-replicable asset. You can't build a new Premier League. You can't start a competitor that anyone cares about. They tried. In 2021, 12 clubs announced the European Super League. It collapsed in 48 hours. The fans didn't want it. The governments didn't allow it. Scarcity held. The existing clubs got more valuable because of it. Second reason, global media expansion. The Premier League broadcast deal keeps growing. In 2001, the total TV deal was worth £1.6 billion over 3 years. Today it's worth £10 billion over 3 years, domestically alone. Add international rights, another £5.5 billion. Every time the deal renews, each club gets richer, and therefore more valuable. This is why buying a football club looks nothing like buying a restaurant or a factory. You're not buying a business, you're buying a monopoly position in a global media product. So you want in. How do you actually buy one? Unlike McDonald's, there's no corporation to apply to, no franchise fee, no hamburger university. Football clubs are private assets. They sell like any other company. You find a seller, you agree a price, you do due diligence, you sign. Except it's not that simple, because the Premier League has to approve you. The Owners and Directors Test, also called the Fit and Proper Person Test. The league reviews your financial background, criminal record, and any prior involvement in football. If you've been disqualified as a company director anywhere in the world, you're out. If you've been convicted of any offense involving dishonesty, you're out. In theory. In practice, the test has failed spectacularly more than once. Massimo Cellino owned Leeds United for 3 years, despite being convicted of tax evasion in Italy. He was banned by the Football League 4 separate times, and still ran the club between bans. The Premier League tightened its rules after a series of ownership disasters. Today, the process is longer, more expensive, and more invasive. You'll need to demonstrate proof of funds, not just that you have the money to buy the club, but that you have enough left over to run it. The league will want a multi-year financial plan. They want to see you can survive relegation. Because relegation, dropping from the Premier League to the Championship, costs the club around $100 million a year in lost TV money alone. If your financial plan can't survive that, you don't get approved. The process typically takes 6 to 9 months from opening bid to completion. In October 2021, Newcastle United was sold for £305 million. The buyer was a consortium, but the real money came from one source: the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia, the Sovereign Wealth Fund of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. PIF owns 80% of Newcastle United. It manages over $700 billion in assets. For context, $700 billion is larger than the entire GDP of the Netherlands. The question everyone asked immediately: why does a $700 billion sovereign wealth fund need a mid-table English football club? The answer has nothing to do with football. Saudi Arabia is spending $500 billion to build a city in the desert called Neom. They're building theme parks, golf tournaments, boxing matches, Formula One races. They're trying to attract 150 million tourists a year by 2030. And they're doing it while human rights organizations document executions, political imprisonments, and the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. A football club in the most watched league on earth is not a sports investment, it's a reputational one. There's a word for this: sportswashing. Using sport to improve or rehabilitate a country's international image. Newcastle fans celebrated in the streets the night the deal was announced. Within 2 years, the club had spent £250 million on new players. They qualified for the Champions League for the first time in 20 years. Whether that makes the deal ethical is a question fans are still arguing about. What it makes it financially is irrelevant. PIF didn't buy Newcastle to make money. They bought it to be seen. The same logic, taken further, is what happened in Paris. In 2011, Qatar Sports Investments bought Paris Saint-Germain for €400 million. At the time, PSG was a mid-table French club, no Champions League titles, low global recognition. Within 5 years, they had signed Zlatan Ibrahimovic, David Beckham, Thiago Silva, Edinson Cavani. In 2017, they paid €222 million for Neymar, the most expensive transfer in football history. Then, €180 million for Kylian Mbappe, the second most expensive. 2 transfers, €400 million, more than the entire purchase price of the club. PSG has never won the Champions League. Every year they're eliminated, usually in the knockouts. And every year, Qatar renews the investment anyway. Because winning the Champions League was never the point. Qatar is hosted the 2022 World Cup, spent $200 billion on infrastructure, owning one of the most recognizable clubs in the world, with global broadcast presence, was part of that investment. Not a sports investment, a nation branding operation. This is where football money stopped following football logic. The problem with Qatar and Saudi Arabia buying clubs and spending unlimited money is obvious. It breaks the competition. A club backed by a sovereign wealth fund can simply outspend everyone. UEFA tried to stop this with financial fair play rules. The idea? You can only spend what you earn. Losses capped, debt limited. The execution. Manchester City was found to have breached FFP regulations over 100 times. The case has been in front of an independent commission for years. A verdict is still pending. PSG was investigated, fined, banned from European competition for 1 season. Then the ban was overturned on appeal. The rules exist. The enforcement is inconsistent. The money keeps flowing. What financial fair play actually did was slow down mid-size clubs trying to compete. The clubs with sovereign backing can absorb fines and legal costs that would destroy a normal owner. When your shareholder has $700 billion, a €60 million fine is a rounding error. Not every football club purchase ends with a sovereign wealth fund. Most end with a private individual, and private individuals run out of money. Bury FC, founded in 1885, 134 years of continuous football. In 2019, the club was expelled from the English Football League. Not relegated, expelled, ceased to exist as a professional football club. The owner, Steve Dale, had bought the club for £1 and couldn't pay its debts. £1, the cheapest football club purchase in recorded history, and still a catastrophe. Because a football club isn't just an asset, it's a liability. Player contracts don't stop because the owner runs out of money. Stadium leases don't pause. Pension obligations don't disappear. When an owner fails, it's the fans, the local community, and the lower-level employees who suffer. There are dozens of clubs like Barry scattered across English football history. Bradford City, Portsmouth, Wimbledon, all went through administration. Some survived, some didn't. In most industries, a failed business is just a failed business. In football, a failed club takes a piece of a city with it. Let's run the real numbers. 2 scenarios. Scenario 1. You buy a solid mid-table Premier League club for $500 million. Annual revenue, around $300 million. Annual costs, wages, transfers amortized, stadium, staff, $340 million. Annual operating loss, $40 million. You run the club for 10 years, total operating losses, $400 million. But in 10 years, the club's value has grown from $500 million to $1.2 billion. You sell. Net position after losses, still $300 million in profit. Scenario 2, relegation. Same club. Year 3, you get relegated. TV money drops by $100 million overnight. Player wages don't drop. Most contracts are Premier League contracts. Annual loss jumps from $40 million to $160 million. You need to inject fresh capital or sell your best players, usually both. If you get back up in one season, you survive. If you don't, you spiral. Leeds United went from the Premier League to League One, 2 divisions below, in 3 years. Their value dropped from $500 million to under $150 million. That's not a bad investment. That's a destruction of capital. Step back for a second. If you invest $500 million in a football club and run it well for a decade, you might make $300 million. If you invest that same $500 million in an S&P 500 index fund, historically you'd have around $1.3 billion after 10 years. The stock market beats the football club, even when the football club goes well. So who actually makes money in football? The agents. The top 10 football agents collectively earn over $500 million a year in commissions. The stadium builders, the kit manufacturers, Nike and Adidas together make over $4 billion a year from football. And the league itself. The Premier League as an entity keeps growing, regardless of which clubs struggle. For most private owners, a football club is not a financial investment. It's a status asset, an ego asset, a seat at a table that very few people in the world can sit at. And for some owners, the sovereign ones, it's something else entirely. It's foreign policy with a football kit on. So, you want to buy a football club. You'll need somewhere between $200 million and $6 billion, depending on which club and which league. You'll lose money running it almost every year. And if you're lucky, patient, and the Premier League TV deal keeps growing, you'll sell it for more than you paid. But the people who truly won in football aren't the club owners. They're the ones who sold them the dream.